you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Relocate Podcast. So, if you're listening and you're not subscribed to my page, go ahead and do that right now. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you hear me, you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Go ahead and press that button. Give a girl some love and let's get it. All right, so joining us today for a conversation is the lovely Brianne Garrett. She is from uh, New York City, I think. Hold on, we're going to get
Long
into that.
Island. Long Island.
We're going to get
Long
into that.
Island. Some people don't think we're part of New York, but we're on the little island. And I'm from Long Island, Bayshore, New York, for to be specific.
Gotcha. I've never been to Long Island. Okay, we're going to talk
You
about
gotta
that. We're
come
going to get into it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so she's from Long Island, New York. She has a dual citizenship in the United States and United Kingdom. She is also an award winning journalist and editor focused on business entrepreneurship, lifestyle, and food. Her brand, Stella, inspires Black women in media to confront and conquer industry challenges, connect with like minded souls, and stay in the groove. Yeah. Brianne, she is also a former managing editor for Aisha Curry's Sweet July. She prioritized storytelling there that uplifts Black women, and she also led content at Forbes, just creating opportunities for creatives of color, and explored wine, food, and pop culture at Wine Spectator. Ooh, and
Hmm.
she's also had collaborations with Eat Okra, and a lot of other brands. Like she's doing a lot of great things in
Thank you.
media. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. Brianne, how are you today?
Well, thank you for having me. I love the concept of this podcast. So it's a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah. I'm just very grateful to have you on because
Oh, thank you.
yeah, like I stumbled upon you and the recent article that you had with Travel Noir,
Yeah.
um, and it talked about how you just left New York to live in London and how your mom's from London. Your grandparents are they have ties to Barbados. They're from Barbados.
Hmm.
I just know dinner growing up had to be on point.
It's funny because I didn't really tap into like how vast and interesting my family heritage is until very recently. Like I had known that my mom was born in London for a while, spent summers in Barbados, so was obviously very closely tied to that side of my family and that culture. But the London element didn't really come in until very recently. And I think that's just a testament to like adult curiosity, right? And also recognizing um, the benefits and yeah, just being a little bit more tapped into my family. When I was younger, it just wasn't as top of mind.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got this question before. People were like, "Oh, well, you must have spent a lot of time in England growing up," and the honest answer is I didn't. My mom was born there, but my grandparents moved her to the States, to New York, Westchester specifically, when she was 4 years old. So she, I think, with the exception of maybe once or twice, didn't really venture back to England much. And so she didn't have a close connection to it. So we didn't really grow up visiting. Um, I had a little bit of I guess my first experience was right before I studied abroad in Spain for 3 months. This was 20, I want to say 2017. Um, I had a stop in London and I didn't enjoy my time. I'm going to be honest. I think I did the very surface level things that you do when you're a tourist. And it was a very limited time. It was a couple of days and it was dreary and it was cold and I wasn't very open-minded and I think I was just excited to just get to Spain. So that first impression wasn't the best. And so I think that's a lot of people's experiences with major cities. London just being a very culturally rich, interesting city, but it requires a lot of time spent there. So for anyone who's like, oh, I hear it all the time, like the food's horrible, it's dreary. Um, I think it just requires some time spent. So I'm a new advocate for the city. And yeah, so that was my first experience there, and a couple of other opportunities fell into my lap. And as I started to actually take the time, spend time with people there, I had a friend who was at the time, her now partner, was living there. So I think it just required really seeing it from like a local lens, the off the beaten path lens that really opened my eyes to possibilities. And that coupled with the prospect of dual citizenship really was alluring. And that was kind of like the impetus for what is now me moving and living there and being between London and New York.
And the UK, or just London in general, the size of it is twice as big as New York. Just gonna throw that out there because I know you mentioned just the adjustment.
Yeah, it's funny. It's yeah, even for someone who was born and raised in New York, spent obviously from Long Island, but spent a lot of time in the city. That's a good point. Like London is a completely new um area. It's large. The metro system, which I happen to love, requires time to adapt to. There's a lot, I think. Um exploring a new city can be overwhelming for even for
Yeah.
someone who grew up in close proximity to another city. It's like no two cities are created equal. They have very different characteristics, very different spirits. Um, and so, yeah, I think it just requires an open mind and a lot of time to get to know a new place.
Okay. It's a good point. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it even more. Um, I think it's also interesting. You mentioned your mom. She's been in the U.S. for quite some time. Hasn't really ventured back to the UK as much. You didn't get that exposure per se until you studied abroad.
Hmm.
Um, so what inspired you, based on your time abroad, um, your upbringing, what inspired you to get citizenship in the UK?
Yeah. Well, first off, while we didn't spend a lot of time growing up or any time at all in the UK, I think what my mom instilled in me was a worldliness and a curiosity, and just in general, we did travel quite a bit, and so I had that exposure and that ability to communicate and connect and understand cultures different from mine from an early age, which I can appreciate, even if it wasn't UK specific. So I think having that like skill in traveling and adjusting prepared me for moving abroad. Even before deciding to move to the UK, I had those sort of skills within me to apply to moving to Spain for that 3 month period when I was studying abroad in college, which is a privilege because I do understand that like a lot of people aren't traveling in their younger years, and so it's an immense culture shock traveling to a new place and uh, adjusting to a new language, communicating with new people, eating new food. Um, all of that I credit to my mom just kind of allowing us to travel and taking us with her and planning trips and even just being able to go to Barbados every summer. But going back to the inspiration for moving to the UK specifically, I think it was a combination of things. Like I said, was able to go travel with one of my dear friends from forever. Uh, Her partner, she had started seeing someone in the UK, and she had roots in the UK from going. She went to the University of Cambridge or Cambridge University, um, And so she had spent some time there, and I had kept asking her, like, I need to visit, I need to see the world, I need to see the UK through your eyes, because there's clearly something I'd missed. Like, I didn't spend enough time there. I want my mind to be changed. I want to be wowed. I want to see what you and love what you love. And of course, she was in love, actually in love. So I think she was even more equipped to show me the UK, show me London in that way. And so I took a trip with her to visit her partner. And we did very off the beaten path things. We did a combination of, like, obviously we had high tea, but I was able to explore different neighborhoods in London, go to Brixton and Notting Hill, which is in West London, and travel up north and take the tube and the bus. And I was just really, it reminded me of all of the things I loved about New York and being in close proximity to New York. But London just really felt like it had its own identity that I could appreciate and that I was so curious about and wanted to learn more about. And again, that required just stay. I was there for almost 2 weeks, so it allowed me to just explore different neighborhoods. I ventured off myself, and I dated. I set up a dating. I put myself on a dating app because I do feel that one of the best ways to get to know a city, not necessarily solely through dating, but by meeting people and meeting locals and really you know seeing it through their eyes. So, and I also just didn't want to third wheel the entire 10 days. I wanted to give my friend and her partner some time. I didn't want to make it all about me. So I ended up meeting someone there. That relationship did extend past the trip. We were in a relationship for over a year, where he would be traveling back to the States and I would travel back to the UK. And so I have to credit that, in part to why I developed such a love for London, because I had a reason to go back. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I think, what was starting to happen too professionally. I think I've always been such a professionally oriented person, a grinder. I think I'll always will be. But I was starting to just think about my trajectory holistically and what I wanted for myself, and how I felt when I was in London really aligned with, I think, what I wanted to feel longer term. And so um the puzzle pieces started coming together, and I was wondering, I think I always wanted to live somewhere else. I think I always had the interest in living abroad. And so, knowing in the back of my mind that dual citizenship was a prospect, combined with the fact that I was looking to venture into a new sort of lifestyle, to be less professionally oriented, it all sort of aligned in really ideal timing. And so I decided to make my relocation to London that anchor that I was then going to adjust every element of my life around, which meant leaving my full-time role for a company that was based on the West Coast in the States, venturing
Wow.
into freelancing, and also moving to London and having this be just this full plunge. It really felt like, okay, if I'm going to do it, let's just do it fully. And so, yeah, relocating to London in that way really became my anchor, I like to say.
What was the name of that dating app, by the way?
I used Hinge.
Oh,
I used Hinge. The Hinge was obviously the successful situation for me, but there was also one called, I don't know the name of it, but it was interesting because it only activated. I could be very inaccurate in how I'm describing this because it was a while ago, but I think it only activated on Thursdays. Either only activated on Thursdays, or you could only schedule dates for Thursdays or something. So I set that one up, which proved to be like not as effective because I was only there for 10 days. So I'm like, all right, I gotta wait till like next Thursday. And I'm pretty sure it was only UK based. I have to fact check this, but it was an interesting app in concept. But I did use Hinge predominantly.
okay. Duly noted. Duly noted. Okay. All right. How did your lifestyle in the US prepare you for the UK?
Oh, I guess I'll answer this question in a slightly different way. I think there were aspects of my lifestyle that I was wanting to change. And that meant, so for context, I was working for a West Coast based company. I had moved out to the West Coast for this job, lived in the Bay for a year, loved it, and then moved back to New York continue to work for that company remotely. Um,
Okay.
and I think I took the role to heart. I took my work so seriously, working in a remote setting, working, as I said, in like the suburbs of Long Island. I think I started to get in my own little bubble of um, like over productivity, where I wasn't necessarily prioritizing other aspects of my life that needed attention, like just general wellness things, like getting up and like moving and being fitness oriented, having a healthy diet, and all of it I attribute to myself because it was a pressure that I think I was putting on myself as a managing editor, as someone who just really cared about what she was building in collaboration with others and really was wanting to establish herself and not disappoint herself or anyone else really. And then imposter syndrome kicked in, and there were just so many competing things. But I think it just boils down to really, I was measuring my success in life by my professional progress, and I decided I didn't want that anymore. And I decided, okay, London is also going to be this new start to really lean into the things of life in life that aren't necessarily sort of productive, in the sense of it's visible, or that it's affecting anyone else but me. I wanted to lean into the hobbies that I do because I just like them. I wanted to get back into cooking. I wanted to start Pilates. I wanted to be in a city where I could just walk and explore. And I think what was alluring about London too is that I hadn't formed community. I didn't know that many people. And so it really was an opportunity to like be introspective and um, be alone and enjoy my own company. I think I had already moved to the West Coast, to California, where I also knew no one. And I think I focused so much on the social aspect of it and forming relationships. And I thought to myself, okay, I did that successfully. And you can do that, Brie. Like, you can move to a new place and you can form new friendships as an adult. You can build community. That's not going to be the priority in moving to London. It'll be secondary. Obviously, you want to have contacts and you want to have a network and you want to have friendships and
Yeah.
relationships. Um, but this move is going to be about you. So I decided that I was going to um, root that move and all of the things about my lifestyle that I wasn't really um, satisfied with in being in New York. So went to went to London and started a Pilates class, started walking and having a
Yes.
more balanced lifestyle, getting up and not going right on my computer, making a nice cup of tea. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I think you think in like idealistically, and you think that you're going to move to a new place and everything about yourself that isn't great will just disappear, right? And then you're going to be the best
Yeah.
form of yourself, and that is far-fetched. Like, you moving somewhere isn't going to change who you are, but what it does, it fosters this new sense of perspective that yeah, allows you to be have a fresh start, I guess. So I was the same me. I think I still am the same me, but with more options and a better outlook.
I think you just knocked out my next question I have for you in regards to, actually no, I'm going to ask it anyways. Because I feel like with the dual the dual the, the dual citizenship that you have, it provides a unique opportunity to embrace your personal and your professional identity. You can really tap into the e- experience of just being able to connect the two worlds and to make that your own and to build a brand with that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, you really
yeah.
can. And did you start Stella before or after you relocated?
Before, but it was right before, and it was intentionally designed that way. I started Stella. I launched the first edition of Stella in June of this year, and then I moved July 1st to London. And
Okay.
Stella kind of has this twofold mission of being very much a personal project, very much a way to anchor my work, and really gives me an excuse to reach out to people I hugely admire in the industry from both
Yeah.
sides of the pond, to interview for Stella, um, to then expose, their insights and their passions and everything I love about them to Stella's community. So it really does feel like it is achieving multiple things. But I do think the beauty of Stella and the beauty of where I'm uniquely positioned is that I'm able to now be a conduit between these two very different media hubs, from both sides of
Yeah.
the pond. Because I do think there's this continued curiosity of UK versus US happenings and the creatives that are sort of the foundation of that. And in this case, being the Black women media professionals that are doing their thing, but like not as necessarily visible on either side. So I, I'm able to be that conduit. And I think I've always considered myself to be a conduit in the industry. Um, in addition to being an editor, in addition to being a strategist, I've loved being like community oriented. And so Stella really feels like it's a culmination of everything I've worked toward in this industry. And it's able, I'm allowed to flex my network to continue to tap into, and like I said, reach out to the people that I'm just really curious about, you know, um, sort of presenting Stella as an opportunity for them to tap my network and to collaborate. So it's been really fulfilling, and I'm excited because I do feel like naturally I have a larger network in the States, um, but I'm slowly starting to really establish my presence in the UK, and with that means there's going to be a lot more featured guests based in the UK, and content and opportunities being plugged in Stella that are UK based. So I'm excited to see that evolve in that way.
Yeah. Man, what is it even like to build a brand of and just be in that entrepreneurial spirit while adjusting to a new city
Yeah.
in a whole different part of the world? What is that like?
I'll tell you, I'm still figuring it out. I think it's new territory for me.
Yeah.
Coming from other brands and being a huge advocate for those brands, and pouring my heart and soul, rightly so, into building these other brands. It's new for me to then like put my name out there as a sole entity and say, okay, Stella is Brianne's brand. Um, and it's daunting in that way because um yeah, I just feel really visible. And but what I've been doing in that way is I'm channeling this experience and really personalizing Stella to include my relocation and to include my new experiences in London. And I was hesitant about that because I thought to myself, and this is the imposter syndrome and the doubt kicking in, do people really care? Like, do they want do they want your personal experience, like involved in Stella? Like, so, and I learned, at the end of the day, if it's just about me and if this is my diary, and there are some people who are going to understand and there are some people who are just aren't going to gravitate toward the content. And Stella, in a way, it's multifaceted. It integrates my narrative and my experience, but it also has industry opportunities. It has, again, behind the paywall, the interview with the industry professional. So there's something for everyone. And I figured, okay, if people aren't gravitating toward my narrative, then there's something else for them, or maybe there's not. But the community that I'm curating, it'll be organic in that way because it's people who actually care and feel like they're getting something out of this. And the reality is, when you build something that's so personal and so intentional, it's not going to be for everyone. So that shouldn't be the goal.
Yeah. I really enjoy your newsletters. Like I
Thank
look
you.
forward to yeah, I look forward to
I
seeing them.
appreciate
And
that so much.
I know that you built this platform with other women, put in media in mind. And I guess maybe in a sense I am in media a little bit. I'm doing the podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't really think about it until now. Um I just wanted to support, but then I'm just like, dang, like I really enjoy like learning about how you just intersect um
Yeah.
the two worlds, and just like I feel like a lot of people who aren't like necessarily Black women, they can still feel fulfilled by just engaging with your newsletter and your podcast. So,
Yeah.
and you have some pretty good gems in there in regards to jobs too, and really being involved in different areas in the world. And people just need to tap into that, y'all. Y'all tap into
That's right.
it.
And thank you for bringing that up. I don't think that because I am predominantly aiming to serve Black women, it doesn't preclude other communities from gaining something from it. And so I do think that distinction is important. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell a lot of people about it. So I
Thank
look
you so
forward to
much.
seeing your growth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean so much because I feel like sometimes I'm just trying to just get out of my head about it and use it as a creative outlet, but also just trust the process. That as I'm
Yes.
evolving, Stella will evolve, my community will evolve, its offerings will evolve. Um, so yeah, I'm just kind of trusting it.
And I love how you mentioned like it's storytelling. You know, it's all about your brand and just who you are as a journalist and editor. Is just all about storytelling.
Yeah,
And we learn, well, I've learned a lot about media, but you know, I got to learn more about like you and your journey,
yeah,
in a sense, and how just you're marrying everything that you love into like one source. So
yeah,
yeah, I hope that more people they tap into that and really get
yeah.
engaged.
I hope so too. And I'm new to newsletters, but I am really seeing the value in it as a creative outlet, as a supplement to other work, even if you're not in media. Um, I had the pleasure of while I was in London, for context, back in the States for the holidays, which again, the beauty of flexibility. But while I was
Yeah.
in London right before I left, I led this workshop at the Columbia Publishing course, their Oxford version, and talked to aspiring media professionals about the value of a newsletter, whether it's Substack or Beehive or any other platform that fits your needs. Um, in just really being that creative outlet, because I think so often we're discouraged from this industry, from layoffs, from being pigeonholed, from nebulous job descriptions, from just being unsure about like where we fit. Um, and I think a newsletter is a really great way to own your narrative and to have like my word of 2024 is anchor. To have your anchor in all of the uncertainty, at least you have that to fall back on, where you can control it. Like you are fully in control. You are the author. You are the storyteller, and that in itself is a goal. You know, apart from any kind of metrics or engagement, this can be for you in a very sort of uncertain industry. So huge advocate for newsletters.
Yeah. And also, you know what? I gotta shout out my girl Chelsea. She was on a recent podcast episode, and she did a lot of journalism work as well. And
Yeah,
you know, she reached a point where she felt like she was also in a bubble in a sense, and she just wanted to do more, but she wanted to have more flexibility with her work life balance,
yeah,
like you did. And
yeah.
so she kind of she she did a bit of a pivot, but into tech. But
Okay,
her experience in journalism kind of like led her to that point, working with
absolutely.
Google and and where's she now? With Amazon, but she
Nice.
got to the point where she just dang, Chelsea gonna beat me up for chopping up her story.
At least she said it very out. She's like, let me come on. She can clarify the rest.
Yeah, no, no, but like she still has like a lot of skill sets from that industry, and she just
Yeah.
married that with what she's doing now in tech. So she kind of
Yeah.
took
I
it
mean,
to a different level. So not
mhm.
like she's not entirely like out of the space, but she she
Made it
just
her
added
own.
a
Yeah.
yeah, she made her own little sprinkle.
Yeah. I say it all the time. I think that journalistic skills are foundational to a lot of and transferable to a lot of other industries, a lot of other jobs. Because again, the storytelling element is just inherent to like a lot of what's necessary. So I really am proud to be a journalist. Like as I, increase my I'm a multi hyphenate creator professional. It'll always be journalist will always be in that title for that reason.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about the dual citizenship now.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, I want to know like how exactly was the process of getting citizenship in the UK, and then
hmm
what challenges did you face while managing the legal requirements?
Yeah. It wasn't as complicated as I think I originally anticipated, and everything was done via mail and virtually. So I didn't need to be
Okay.
physically in the country, luckily, because that would have been a whole other logistical nightmare. Um, so I applied via the website and just kind of made sure that based on what I understood about my background and the sort of situation, which is that my mom was born during this year in the country, does that qualify me? And they have a pretty like intuitive like layout of what the requirements are. So I kind of confirmed that I was in fact qualified. And then what was required was just sending documentation on my end and my mom's end. So birth certificates, passports, all through the mail. I will say the one hiccup was that I needed original copies, or if they weren't original, I needed to apply for official copies from these places. I did try sending like photocopies, and then they got back to me saying, "I'm sorry, this is not official enough. So you
Oh
need to
wow.
send in, you need to go." So that was like a little bit of an investment, worth it investment, obviously. So yeah, once that was submitted, um, it was all out of my hands. I also had to just submit like the passport photo. I had to get like a viable photo taken, send that in with the application, and then everything was just we corresponded. I corresponded with the um, government sort of agency people through email, and it. I remember vividly. I had spent New Year's timing. Right after Christmas, I took a trip to the UK and remember taking a day trip from London to Bath, which is beautiful. It was a rainy day. And we went to see Stonehenge. And I just remember receiving a text saying that my passport had been approved, which is
Okay.
obviously confirming that I had been granted citizenship. So the fact that that all happened in the UK felt really obviously just appropriate. It felt like a full circle moment. It was just exciting. At that time, this was 2022, the end of 2022, heading into 2023. And moving, just for context, at that point in time was not a consideration for me. I had applied for dual citizen for the security and just for the luxury to have it for dual citizenship, but I wasn't considering moving heavily. But there was something about receiving that text, knowing that my passport was in transit, that kind of it was like a push in the direction of, okay, what am I going to do with this now? Like, you have this opportunity, this privilege. You're just gonna like let it sit. You're gonna let that passport just like collect dust in your closet because it didn't feel like enough to have it. I needed to take action with it, and so that was when I started seriously thinking about what it would take, what the timing would look like, what logistics would look like to actually to relocate. And again, similar to what I said earlier, it was good timing because I was starting to feel burned out. I was starting to seriously thinking about my trajectory and what I wanted out of life and was wanting to be less professionally oriented. So it all felt really, really aligned. But that text, that confirmation was really the impetus for what would then become a relocation within that next year.
Yeah. I know we talked offline a bit about just being able to like you moved, you stayed for a few months and then you came back to the US and you
Mm-hmm.
have plans next year to extend your stay in London.
Yeah.
And I think that it's neat that you have the ability to stay in one place and if you feel burned out, just go back to another place. Like you
Yeah.
can really just
Yeah.
there's so much that you can do. There's so much that you can take advantage of with this new opportunity, which I
Yeah.
love. I feel like more people should take advantage if they could.
For sure. If their situation allows, I think for me, it was funny because I did move, I call it, to London July 1st, touchdown the first of the month, somewhat intentionally, and plan to stay there for 3 months and then come back to the States in October because I had a work obligation at a conference and then a wedding, and then it was Thanksgiving and Christmas. So it really made sense for me to just stay put in the States through the holidays, which I'm currently fulfilling. But what was interesting about that move in July, knowing that I was going to be coming back to the States, is that I came back to the States in October and people were like, oh, so you're back. Like, was that it? Like, was it just that 3 month period? And then I would clarify and say, well, no, I'm going back for a longer duration in January to London. And I would feel weird sometimes about explaining myself because I'm like, oh, do they think I'm like, I gave it 3 months and that was it, or that I gave up, um, but I think the reality is when we think about like the concept of relocating and the concept of moving or building a home or planting seeds somewhere else, I don't think that should ever be tied to a specific duration. I think that you can move somewhere and call it a move, and it could be a month, it can be 2 months, it can be 5 years. It's more of a mindset than anything else.
Yeah.
um so if I were, if it were the case that I had moved to London for those 3 months, I would have honored that and really leaned into, embraced, and maximized that time. I think the beauty of it is I'm not ready. I'm not done. I'm not done with the UK just yet. So I will be going back. I'll be moving to Brixton and I signed a long lease, so can stay put for a while. That's my situation, but I do think, and I do encourage people to consider or relearn what they think moving means and what it requires, because I think you can do whatever works for you, and not be too worried about conventional sort of expectations.
In a way, it's similar to how people up north, I say up north, I'm in Texas.
North, I get that. Like, wait, what do you mean? Okay, that makes sense.
like people up north, some people, not all, but like some people they have like their summer homes,
Yes.
in Florida or
Yes.
maybe in a different country. But I feel like it's that kind of like that concept.
Yeah, it is. It is. I chose
Like
two relatively cold places, but but it is similar in concept for sure.
I was gonna touch on that. Um, I've never been to New York in like the winter.
Uh,
All the times were in August. I went to Afro Punk. Yeah. Yeah, I've went a few times. And then I have family or I had family in Pennsylvania.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
but I've never been to New York in the winter. Like, it's given frigid. It's
It
given
is.
frigid.
Yeah,
And I
that's
don't
a good
even
word
know.
for it.
Yeah, and I don't
That's a
even
good word.
know like how the weather is in London, like during that
Comparable. I
time. That's
think
crazy.
London gets a bad rep for being uh like monotonous in what like in temperature and in like that it's always raining and dreary. Um but I have experienced, and maybe I just got lucky, like really lovely periods of time where it's been beautiful sunny days. But I've also learned to embrace London's dreariness because I actually think it contributes to its charm a little bit. And that only comes with time spent because if I were planning a 5-day trip to London and it rained every single day, I wouldn't be happy. So it is definitely relative to your situation. Um, but I think in terms of temperature, especially during this time of year, I'm used to it. I knew what I was getting into because it's not super different from New York temperatures. And there's actually something really lovely. I think everyone prioritizes going to London in the summer months, um, like May through I guess August, September. But there's something magical about London in the during the holiday season. It's just beautiful. People say about New York, and I have to say, I'm not putting them, against each other, but London rivals New York in terms of its like whimsical, holiday spirit around this time of year. So putting it out there for anyone who's like discouraged from going around this time, it's a sight to be seen. So I'd recommend it.
Um, Quick question about your rent. Like the whole process of just finding a place to stay in
Mm-hmm.
London. Is it the same process as how, well, actually, I don't even know how it works in New York because
It's
prices are
it's it's definitely
astronomically high,
comparable
but
in prices. That's another thing. It's expensive. It is expensive, especially for one bedrooms, which is what I sought out for this new year. Um, but I will say the process was pretty similar to what I had experienced before in New York. When I did the July through September through October, the early October living situation, I did like a sublet. So I found
okay.
that to be a lot more reasonable than an Airbnb situation because those prices are so inflated, and it's just for 3 months. I think it just made sense to just be in a little bit more of a economical situation. So I did a sublet for a 2 bedroom in an area of London called Pimlico. And I actually did it with a friend. And speaking of short term moving situations, she decided she wanted to move to London for a month. And she's like, I work remotely. I have flexibility. I'm going to move. And she called it a move to London for a month. Um, Loved it so much that she's considering a move next year. So that is a testament to like also doing a trial period to assess if it's something you want to do long term. So we lived in Pimlico in a 2 bedroom in a sublet situation um, for July, for the month of July. She left, I stayed in that apartment, and yeah, I think that worked for both of us because it was temporary, um, and and then I was able to take my time in exploring neighborhoods, figuring out where and what I liked and where I wanted to be and what neighborhoods I enjoyed, what tube lines I gravitated towards. Um, and so I didn't feel pressured to commit to something long term. So when it came down to figuring out housing for this upcoming January, which I did find something in Brixton, which I love in South London, I had the knowledge and the insight to be able to choose wisely.
Okay. Do they ask for like three times the income or I
I
don't
think it's
like.
Yeah, it's very similar to what I've done in New York. So you have to just show proof of income. You
Okay.
obviously have to give, not obviously, but in my case, I had to give a security deposit in the form of, I think, first month's rent. Um, or maybe it was, sorry, I think it was first month's rent and a security deposit, if I'm not mistaken, um, in order to secure your spot. Yeah, very similar to New York protocols. And I'm not sure how it works in Texas, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is just showing your proof of income for a more formal lease. I didn't have to do that for the sublet, but for formal leases, they do ask for documentation. Um, and in my case, I do think it worked in my favor that I was a dual citizen too, because a lot of people, uh, leasing agents or landlords want to proof of of a visa, like the duration of the visa, that you're not going to have you're not going to encounter any issues where your visa expires and you have to fulfill the lease. um so there are a lot of logistics, but I think I was able to bypass some of the kinks by being a citizen for sure.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a lot of questions about taxes.
Oh, so do I. So do I. Probably the biggest thing stressing me out right now heading into 2025 is the dual filing, which is a requirement. And this is a thing I think that I would encourage everyone to, or just like not stress, because there are so many moving parts to moving, and that includes getting a UK number if you want to, and obviously figuring out housing, figuring out taxes. And I just think, uh, and this was hard for me as like a type A Virgo to not check everything off of the list immediately, because that would have, I think, just really hijacked my experience starting out. And so I decided I'm going to take my time. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to do my research and really understand what my options are. Healthcare is another one. Um, so where I'm at now on the tax front is I actually have a call scheduled, and I think next week, talking to a dual tax expert just to understand what the process is, because it stresses me out. It feels like really complicated. Tax filing in the U.S. is already complicated, so factoring in the
Yeah.
UK feels like it's a whole other ball game. So I'm just giving myself grace in what I don't know, and really leaning into people who have done it already, people who have the resources, and weighing my options and taking notes, and just again, above all, just not stressing out, because that would defeat the whole purpose in moving to London. So I grace is another word of the season for me right now.
How do you even find that type of tax preparer with that level of expertise? What?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was working on a story on it. So again, beauty of being a journalist is the beauty of being a journalist and actually doing like content like uh, that is rooted in personal matters is that it serves multiple purposes. It achieves multiple things. So I was doing research for a story, and came across some contacts. But even if that wasn't a reality, I I think it was just who I was speaking to. I happened to, it's funny, it's like a friend of a friend introduced me to a friend who was wanting to move to London, or still wanting to move to London. She knew someone who happens to be a dual citizen, operates her law practice in London, knew a tax expert. So it's like, it really is just like a stream of events that sometimes lead you to the right people. I think it's just all about talking and being open about your situation, offering what you can offer, and being receptive to what people can give you. And I think that's all part of building community when you move somewhere. And it requires a level of vulnerability. And but it's also a nice strategy in just general relationship building. You can form friendships, but also get some really great insight in the process. So it's been nice.
When you go to the store in London, and like let's say you're buying a bottle of water, and the you see the price, next to the bottle of water, and it says $2, or I guess whatever, like in whatever currency there is in London.
Yeah.
Pounds, yes. Um, it says 99 cent, whatever amount that I mentioned. 99 cent, you go to the cash register. How much does this bottle of water cost? Like, do they even account for taxes, in the price, or
Um,
like do they tack on taxes at the register? How does that work?
yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you, so 1 pound is equivalent to $1.27 USD. So, and so it's interesting because you'll go out and I just looked it up because it changes, but you'll go out and something will be seemingly that was definitely an adjustment for me because food, general alcohol, like you're at a restaurant, right, and you're looking at the prices in pounds and you're like, oh shoot, this is reasonable. And then you're like, again, you're looking at your card statements later and you're like realizing that in USD it's different, so it's just a little deceiving. Like you have to train your mind to think, okay, pounds are different, there's a conversion rate. um so I think that was an adjustment. I will say overall, grocery shopping in London feels everything feels cheaper. I think it is generally, I would say, cheaper. And I also think quality wise, and this is no shame or shade to the States, but I find that the meat is like really high quality. Like I've been also just trying to do more farmers markets, but even at like a Sainsbury's, which is one of like the top London grocery stores, I just find the quality of the meat that I'm cooking is higher. Um, so that's been really nice. Uh, the selections are vast. Oh, the cheese selection's great. It feels like an experience, and it could just be, again, romanticizing my life a bit more, but like everything feels like a better experience. Shopping and going to the farmers market, and it feels wholesome. But I will say I do generally find that grocery shopping specifically is cheaper.
No, you were leaning on the right side when you said no. You said no shame, but there should be shame. Like there should
Hey,
be
just an observation.
so much shame. I mean, I grew up um where I was able to get like farm fresh meat, and to
Where did you
see
grow up?
in South Carolina. I grew up
Okay.
in like a very small like town of 500 people. So
Wow.
very tiny town. Yeah, Harleyville, South Carolina. And
Okay.
like I grew up with like the fresh eggs, fresh, like, saw the chicken just
Yeah. You knew
close your
where your food was coming from.
yes, close your ears,
Yeah.
vegans, because just the neck, just like I
It's the visual.
yeah, and understand like where you're coming from when you mention like the quality is just different. I've been reading articles on how like they take pride in ingredients. They don't really necessarily use like a lot of preservatives or
Mm-hmm.
these random like food colorants like red dye number 40. What is that?
Yes. Yeah. There's no laundry list of ingredients. It's a lot more concise. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, I've been enjoying it. I also think I am trying to balance being new to London, like eating out versus cooking. And I think sometimes that's another thing too, kind of going off on a tangent, but just the whole nature of grocery shopping means I'm going to be cooking, means I'm going to be in the house, in my flat. And I actually am excited about that because part of getting to know a new city and being in a new place doesn't necessarily mean that you're like in the streets all the time. Like there's something to be said about like creating a home and a welcoming, like peaceful sanctuary for yourself within the confines of your flat. So I'm excited to just have like really nice nights with a glass of wine and a homemade meal, and do meal prep and do all of the things that I would do normally in a place I'm settled versus the eating out every night nature of being somewhere temporary.
We should get you back on here for a part 2.
Yeah, right. Check in.
Like,
Let's check in 6 months from now, mid-year
yes.
of 2025, and see if I'm sticking to what my plan was. And if that's not the case, I will be giving myself grace. But I fully intend to do what I say I'm going to do, as we all do. But
Yeah.
can't be perfect.
Yeah. But we're gonna root for you. We're gonna
Thank
root
you.
for you through the ebbs and the flows, because that's what this space is all about. Like we go through like unexpected moments in our life, but it's all about how you react to
Yeah.
the elements that are outside of your control. And like you said, you're gonna give yourself grace. I feel like
Yeah.
this whole process is it's a form of grace.
Yes.
You're not quitting the US cold turkey. You are gracefully transitioning
Yes.
into
Yes.
London.
Yes, I love that. That's exactly right. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, so I got one more question. Then we're gonna let you
Okay.
go.
Okay.
Um, so this is a question I ask everyone. Um, I want you to think about the younger version of yourself, the person who wasn't even thinking about necessarily relocating. You mentioned that earlier. You were like, hey, this citizenship is cool. The dual citizenship is cool, but
Hmm.
eh, uh, I like. I think I'm just gonna stay here in New York. Like I'm just gonna
Yeah.
have this new passport in my back pocket,
Yes.
um, just in case. Um, Actually, I got 2 questions.
Okay.
Is your mom looking for like another daughter? I think we kind of look like. Like now I think about it, I'm like, I think I might want to do a citizenship too. Like,
That is not what I expected you to say. We can figure something out. Although I will say I'm not about breaking the law. These people, I don't know, the UK, they scare me. They scare me. I'm like, I need to, even with tax filing, I'm like, I got to do this, and this, because I can't be messing with anyone else's. But I'm kidding. But let's chat. We do. I can see it. I can see it. That is so funny.
does that look like yours? We
Oh,
could make this
really?
work.
Are you? You have? I have the worst. My eyesight is getting worse. I'm actually thinking about contacts, but um, I could see it. I could see it for sure.
That's what I should have asked you about, like eye doctors, because I have contacts. My eyesight is the worst.
Mine too. Mine
The
too.
worst.
Yeah, I'm increasingly considering it because I love these glasses, but it's just not practical to wear glasses like 24/7. But I think the more I don't wear them, the more I squint, the more I strain my eyes more. I obviously wear them for like when I do drive and TV watching and for like interviewing, but and speaking and work purposes. But yeah, I think I might have to do some searching for some contacts. But that's another thing. I think another thing you can check in with me about is getting all of my medical needs out the way, finding a GP and gynecologist and all of those things that I can't drop the ball on those things. So yeah, that's definitely high priority for 2025 is finding people that I like out in the UK.
Jumped
Again,
off
not
the
getting
court.
stressed out. It's gonna be checked off.
Ah, gosh, there's so many things that you just don't think about until after the fact.
And that's okay too. It's like give yourself grace for the things that realize in the process, because that's part of it. It is a process, and you don't have to have it all figured out. I think people think, okay, I have to have all of my ducks in a row before I take the plunge, and I think if you think that way, you'll never do it. So
Mm,
might as well do it and figure it out in the process and enjoy it along the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
love that. Okay. Stay the course, Kirsten. Stay the course. All right,
Stay
last
the
question.
course.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're gonna think about Brianne, person
Hmm.
that you were when you obtained the UK citizenship, but that was in your back pocket, right? Um, Considering that version of yourself and the person that you are today, what advice would you give to the younger version of Brianne?
I would say get out of your head. Get out of your
Okay.
head, um, because I am a natural overthinker, and I think in some ways that has served me well professionally, but it's mostly um, restricted me in uh, maybe risk taking, or it's just facilitated a lot of fear. So I would say just get out of your head about um, any mistakes that you feel like you're making, um, any sort of hurdles that you're encountering. All of it is leading you down a path of greatness, um, and also getting out of your head in the sense that stop putting so much pressure on yourself, because it's stressing you out and it's burning you out, and you're not giving yourself enough credit. So get out of your head and um, live life is what I would say, because again, all of it is leading you toward divine greatness, and there's no use in worrying about it because it's just going to figure itself out.
Brianne, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, it has been such a good time.
I really enjoyed this conversation. Um,
Likewise.
I feel like it's going to resonate with a lot of people. And I mean,
I
it's
hope so.
definitely resonating with me.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm glad. I feel like it's nice to have these conversations too, as a personal reminder of why I'm doing it. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed this too. All right. Um, Thank y'all for tuning in to this episode of the Relocate Podcast. Make sure y'all tune in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, unless you're tuning in from Apple Podcasts. You get the first scoop on the podcast, the new episodes before the others. So just do that part of the process is outside of my control. So I can't really do much with the timing, but everywhere else 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So thank you for tuning in and catch y'all on the flip.